Hey gang, we are in Lancashire, England, and we're in a little charming little ancient town called Roughly. And we're going to be visiting the grave of an accused witch who was executed in Lancaster. Her name Alice Nutter. And we're going to eventually go to her grave. I thought we'd stop here first because there's a very interesting statue, I believe, to her memory. I don't know, well, this is not related, but I thought I'd show this. All gave some gave all. That sounds like World War I. And World War II. It's absolutely gorgeous here. There's a little river, a little stream here. And if you go up the road, when I'm finished here, which this is going to be brief, we're going to go up to New Church in Pendle, which is a couple of miles up the road. But I just had to see this statue in person because it's very haunting. And I think that's the face, or would be the face, of Alice Nutter, who was probably innocent. Now you talk about the Salem witch trials, right, in the United States. This is the same kind of thing. Panic. Get the prosecutor. Look at those chains. She holds a yellow flower. It's very haunting. It's an amazing piece of sculpture. Look at this. The cape. And there you see, here we see a little plaque on the ground here, explanation. Looks like this was put up in 2012. All right, we're going to head up the road here. We're going to go to St. Mary's Churchyard, and we'll pick up the story there. I'm going to tell you the story of the Pendle witches. I'm going to tell you the accused and what they were accused of and what happened in the court and the executions. And then after the end of this whole thing, we have exclusive permission. We're going to get a guided tour. It's not for public, it's special, at Lancaster Castle in the dungeons where they were held. And I can't wait, because this is like the real thing. And I don't even know what to expect. But from what I understand, it's cold and damp and hazardous, not open to the public. So, all right, let's go up the road. A gentle breeze here in New Church in Pendle. And that's St. Mary's. Beautiful old church, and we're in the churchyard here. A lot of old graves. So yeah, I'm going to tell you the story of the witches here. And we're going to go back to the 1600s. Her name was Alice Nutter, as I mentioned. Thanks Dustin Burrell for suggesting this story. When I saw that statue on Find a Grave, I gotta go there, and then digging into it. It's quite a story. This is probably the most famous story in most parts of England back in the day. So I think what we'll do, we're gonna talk for a while, so I think what we're gonna do is once we get up here a little, we're gonna crisscross, and I'm gonna have to walk very slowly and carefully because there's a lot of holes. So we're gonna go back to 1612, these trials, up in Lancaster, where we're gonna end up. And what's fantastic is, what we're lucky with is there was a factual, a fully written account of all this recorded by the clerk of the court. He was a man named Thomas Potts. In 1613 he published his account a year afterwards, so it was pretty fresh. And the book was entitled The Wonderful Discovery, with an IE, of witches in the county of Lancaster. Yeah. So this is fairly accurate. So Alice Nutter, who is buried here, her family plot, was born in 1540, and the Nutters were a very wealthy family down the road there. They owned land, and when she grew old, she was about 71 or 72, as we know, she was accused of witchcraft along with a bunch of others. And if you're accused of witchcraft, well, the outcome's not going to be good. It was on Good Friday in the year 1612, and there was a witches' coven being convened that night at a place called Malkin Tower. One of Alice's acquaintances was a witch, and she suggested that Alice come to see what it was all about, and that would be a bad mistake for Alice. The coven commenced, it was said, and many foul spells were cast. But what they didn't know was, watching from the shadows were witnesses from the village. One would be particularly important for the trial, and this would be a daughter who had witnessed in the house. So the next day there was a man named Henry Milton, after this coven was held, who died, and right away the rumor started that it was the curse from the coven. And then other foul acts unfolded, and more deaths too. The authorities moved in and arrested the group, and as you can imagine, a number of witnesses had already come forward. And like I said, I alluded to, one of them was a 9-year-old girl. And there'd be a big trial, 11 accused. Trial at Lancaster Castle on August 18th. And as was the way, they were denied access to lawyers or the right to call witness. The prosecutor was this local magistrate named Howard Knoll. Alice Nutter, along with a woman named Alison Device, Elizabeth Device, who went by the name aka Squinting Lizzie, James Device, Anne Whittle, who went by the name Old Chaddocks, Anne Redfern, Catherine Hewitt, who would go by the name Mold Heels, Jane Bullock, John Bullock, Alice Gray, and Elizabeth Southerns, who went by the name Old Dempke. So the 2-day trial starts, and Ann Whittle, Old Chaddocks, was accused of the murder of Robert Nutter. She initially pleaded not guilty, but probably under torture she'd made a confession to our prosecutor, Roger Knoll. That was pretty common to get what you wanted, these confessions. Nothing different in later decades and centuries. So this was read out in court, everything she said, and the evidence presented by James Robinson, who had lived with her family 20 years earlier. He claimed to remember that Robert Nutter had accused Anne of turning his beer sour, and he said that she was commonly believed to be a witch. Well, Anne broke down and admitted her guilt, calling on God for forgiveness, and the judges to be merciful to her daughter, Anne Redfern. Elizabeth Device, Squinting Lizzie, was charged with the murders of James Robinson, John Robinson, and together with Alice Nutter and Dempke, the murder of Henry Milton. Now, Elizabeth vehemently maintained her innocence. She was steadfast. It was recorded that this odious witch suffered from a facial deformity, resulting in her left eye being set lower than her right. So, you know, she looked like a witch. She probably had to be a witch. Then the main witness came out against her, Elizabeth. It was her daughter, Jeanette, who was 9 years old. And Jeanette was brought into the courtroom and asked to stand up and give evidence against her own mother. Mother Elizabeth could only watch as her child put on record the accusations that would lead to her execution. And she began to curse and scream at her daughter Jeanette, which forced the judges to have her removed from the courtroom. Now, Jeanette was literally placed on a table to stand and talk, and she stated that her mother had been a witch for 3 to 4 years. She also said her mother had a familiar, which, guys, a familiar is a supernatural friend, called Ball, who appeared in the shape of a brown dog. Jeanette claimed to have witnessed conversations between Ball and her mother, in which Ball had been asked to help with various murders. Jeanette went on to testify that the witches all decided to blow up the castle, and in the process kill the governor, Thomas Covell, in order to free those imprisoned there. She spoke of witches mounting ponies and flying off on them before vanishing into thin air. Now it was James Device. Also gave evidence against his mother, saying that he had seen her making a clay figure of one of her victims, John Robinson. So, no surprise, Elizabeth Device was found guilty. Guilty. James Device was in pitiful condition. He had been physically abused during his imprisonment. He pleaded not guilty to the murders by witchcraft of Anne Townley and John Duckworth. However, he, like Ann Whittle, that would be Old Chaddocks, had earlier made a confession to Knoll, the prosecutor, which was again read out in court. That and the evidence presented against him by his sister Jeanette, who said she had seen her brother asking a black dog he had conjured up to help kill Townley, was sufficient to persuade the jury to find him guilty. Anne Redfern was next to be charged, participating in the murder of Robert Nutter, and the evidence against her was considered unsatisfactory. But Anne was not so fortunate the following day when she faced her second trial for the murder of Robert Nutter's father, Christopher, to which she pleaded not guilty. And one of the witnesses' statements accused Anne of having made clay figures of the Nutter family. Witnesses were called to testify, and they said that Anne was a witch more dangerous than her mother. Now, she refused to admit her guilt to the end and had given no evidence against any others of the accused, but she was, Anne Redfern, found guilty. Jane Bullock and her son John were both accused and found guilty of the murder by witchcraft of Jeanette Dean. Of course, both denied they had attended the meeting at Malkin Tower, but there's Jeanette's device on the table, identifying Jane as having been one of those present. And John as having turned the spit to roast the stolen sheep, the centerpiece of the Good Friday Coven meeting. Not good. Alice Nutter was up next. It was her turn now to face her accusers. She was unusual among the accused. She was comparatively very wealthy, the widow of a tenant yeoman farmer. Now, Alice didn't make any statements either before or after the trial, except to enter her plea of not guilty. And the charge was she murdered Henry Mitten by witchcraft. But she said nothing. The only evidence against Alice seemed to have been that Janet Device said that Alice had been present at the Malkin Tower Coven meeting. And now it was said that Alice may have attended the meeting at Malkin Tower on her way to a secret and illegal Good Friday Catholic service and refused to speak for fear of incriminating her fellow Catholics. And that's probably why she didn't speak. Many of her family, the Nutter family, were Catholics. Two had already been executed as Jesuit priests, John Nutter in 1584 and his brother, Robert, in 1600. Prosecutor Knoll asserted that the law stated that it was illegal to aid or assist witches. So alas, Alice Nutter was found guilty. Catherine Hewitt was next. She was charged and found guilty of the murder of Ann Folds. She was the wife of a clothier. She had attended the meeting with Malkin Tower with Alice Gray, and according to the evidence by James Device, both Hewitt and Gray told the others that at the meeting they had killed a child. Now, 9-year-old Jeanette Device also picked Catherine out of a lineup and confirmed that she was there at the Malkin Tower meeting. Alice Gray was accused with Catherine Hewitt on the murder of Ann Folds. Next, it would be Allison Device, charged with causing harm by witchcraft. She had been out begging on the road. She ran into a peddler, John Law, and she was begging him for money. And he didn't give her money, so I guess she said she prayed for her, and she was new to witchcraft. So she was actually repentant because she prayed or said a spell to bring her familiar, the dog, and the dog asked her, "Do you want to harm the peddler, John Law?" She said yes. Just then he fell down. We think he really had a stroke. It was just coincidence, probably. He was paralyzed down one side by the stroke. They thought he had died, but still, this was just as bad. Allison was actually brought to his bedside, and there she admitted to him everything. about what brought him down, and she begged him for forgiveness, which he gave. So, unfortunately, his son, Law's son Abraham, was not so satisfied. He went to the prosecutor Noel, and he confronted in court and wanted to see her hanged. Now, what was unique was Allison was confronted by her victim in court. Not in a bad way, he was just there. He was permanently a cripple. And when he came in, she fell to her knees in tears and confessed. So you know she was found guilty immediately. There was only one person found not guilty, her name Alice Gray. So it would be death by hanging. Alice Nutter was brought to Gallows Hill with the rest up at Lancaster on August 20th, 1612. And there they were all hanged. Before they were hanged, they were kept in the dungeon. And that is where we're going to go, the castle dungeon. So let's approach the church here and pay our respects to the family and to Alice. Now, there's a woman who lives right there. And she seems to know. I said, "Where's her grave?" And she told me, as you face the church door here, first slab to the right on the ground where I put the rose. And it's not just Alice, but it's the whole family. All the Nutters. Now, when I read, you can hardly read it, but I see the name Elizabeth, right? I don't know if this is it. Here's Elizabeth again. Don't see a last name, but I see something, Elizabeth, something with an H. So I don't know that that's Nutter. But we're close. I checked this one out. Not it. And I checked that one out. And I checked that one out. Not it. All right, folks, let us go to the dungeons, but first, rest in peace. We know they're here somewhere. Rest in peace, Alice Nutter and family. Let's go to the dungeons. All right, gang, we are here in Lancaster at Lancaster Castle. There it is. And to the left is the St. Mary Church. And you see that nice gentleman over there walking? That is Nick. And he just gave us a whole bunch of information on some things I didn't know about the church and the castle. We got a lot to unpack here, guys. So Nick and Alice, they're part of the crew that's working on the redoing the church, or refurbishing. But they told me that, or Nick told me that. Look at that, the bell tower. So this goes back to the 1500s. And one thing he told me is that in 1900 they took the outer wall here and they moved it there to build that. But again, this is all 1500s, and that wall over there is 1500s. Now the other thing that they told me, which I thought was really interesting, and just kind of like side things, we're going to get to the castle, which was a prison, big prison. But if you look at the window, you see that tall window there? He told me that after the hangings of the witches of Pendle, that they would do the hangings there in that, and it was long drop method. And that's just an interesting fact that you just would never know. Now this, what we're looking at here, is the graveyard, but there's no stones here. The reason is the stones were falling over and it was a hazard. But there are a lot of bodies here. Now, interestingly also, the witches of Pendle were hanged on the other side of the city. There's a place, and there's a good chance that, I mean, it's all gone now. There's nothing to see. But there's a good chance that that is where they are all buried, in just a mass grave. And that's probably where, I thought Alice might be here, but she's probably over there. So I checked in with our friend Vicky, and after this, we've got about an hour to kill before we get to go see the dungeon. Got to get a hard hat, and I don't even know what to expect. But it's, from what I understand, it's not like the movies. Nick was telling me also there's an interesting burial here. Now this is where in 1990 they started putting parishioners' cremains. But they relocated one grave, and they did excavate it from the main part of the cemetery, and it is of someone named F.E.J. See that? 2nd of April, 1778. And there is a hand down there, just a hand, and it is from a slave girl, and she was black. And the story goes that she was either caught stealing, and that's why just her hand is here, or, you know, at the time, going, 1700s, considered inferior because a slave or a servant, of course this was consecrated ground. I'm not sure if it still is. Gotta be, right? Yeah. Just marveling at the age and the history and stained glass. I wonder if we can take a quick look inside. Not sure where. I think the entry is. Let me just take a quick look back here. Is there a door here? Now, oh, here's something else that yeah, there is a door, but we can't get in there. But you see this flagging here? This is really a tough situation. But I guess because of all the additional rain and weather, there has been a lot of erosion, but the foundations here, in the medieval times, they really didn't make them very deep. They didn't need to, I guess, but now this building is starting to sink, and the ground below said it's turning to like putty. And they may have to undertake, because you see this tape, Nick is picking up, they're picking up like chips that are falling constantly. And they may have to come back and underpin this whole thing and excavate it out and put new foundations in. We're talking 15 million pounds or more. So yeah, I wanted to caveat the, where Alice is buried, that I don't think she's there. That's where she grew up and lived, and a lot of this stuff happened near there. But good chance she's not there. Good chance she's not even here. She's lost and forgotten. That other side of town. Let me just take a quick look. If there's a service going on, we will back right out. Stunning. Look at this. Well, there's nobody here praying, so I feel like we can walk through. Now look at this. Is this the place where the wealthy people get to sit, or is this the choir? You tell me. It's the main altar. Look at that stained glass. Look at this woodwork and tile work. Yeah, that's tile work on there. Reflecting in the sun. That coat of arms. Well, is that tile work or fabric? I don't know. Very Gothic. I love the little faces. Don't you love that? They're everywhere. So, like most churches, everything's symmetrical. And there in the back are the pipes. Look at the stained glass figures, angels. Looks like, I don't know, would that be Michael the Archangel? Kings. Look at the detail. They almost come alive. St. Patrick and others. All right, gang. Let's head over to the castle and go down into the dungeons. Let's go.
Thank you so much. See you later. Bye. Can you open that?
Yeah.
Do you want it open?
Oh yeah, that would be cool. What was that room originally? You don't know?
Well, it's had a bit of a mixed use really. We're not sure. It's not got cells in it as such, so.
Yeah.
So it's just some auxiliary room. You say there's stairs that go down or up? Oh, they go up. Okay. Ooh. Secret passageway. Look at this. Now that. Wonder if they really look like that. Which one is Alice Nutter? Oh, I like that one. Oh, I know who that one is. I forget her name, but the one with the eye. Yeah. Oh, look at them. They do look like witches. How about that one? I think she looks the best. Her and the one with the eye. Oh, is that Alice Nutter? Yeah, it might be, but this one, I think of all of them, this is the one that creeps me out. Or maybe that's pretty bad. Okay. We are at the castle, Lancaster Castle, and this is Vicky. Hi, Vicky. Vicky is a rock star, and these guys are letting us in. Martin, he's been down there. All right, so I have my flashlight. Do I need my flashlight?
You do. So
Okay.
just
And you got a light too. Okay.
so watch, the stones are a little uneven, quite slippy. Just make sure that you don't sort of hold on to the handrail.
The handrails. Okay.
What we're doing, we've got a project where we're doing all the health and safety work in here. That's why it's locked
Right.
to the public.
Look at
We
this.
are looking at new handrails and
That is
lighting.
scary looking. Well, I'll follow you and I'll turn my flashlight on when I get down there so I can hold on.
Yes.
Are you coming or no?
I'm gonna come behind you.
Okay, behind me. All right.
Mind your head on the lower
Yes, sir.
rafters here.
Thank you.
Yes, just very steady.
Wow, I can already feel the cold dampness. So they had the Pendle witches down here, huh?
Yes.
Can you imagine? All right.
Mind your head.
Yep, I have radar. Tall man. Unless I wear a hat with a beak on it, or a brim, then it becomes a problem.
And again, low arch there, but a step up, so.
Okay, is this it? This is it? This is just,
This is it, yeah.
Oh, look at this. Well, that's why you get the hard hat. Check it out, guys. So it has a vaulted, a peaked ceiling. Let me get my flashlight on here. Look at that. The first thing that I notice are these rings. They're lashed, chained to the floor, huh? Wow. Look at that. The original. It's very cold in here. So this is just a room with nothing in it, cold and dark. And of course, the most horrible thing is let me do this. Yeah. Get a close look at that. Is that there's no light. If you're in prison here, all in the dark, talking to each other. What's gonna happen? We're sentenced. When are we gonna die? Look at these. Well, this is from dripping and moisture. Look at that. That is from the moisture. This had to be torture. The gentleman out there was telling me, what's his name?
Graham.
The guard, William. He was telling me that if you're in here, and you had it, a few weeks or months before you were going to be either sentenced or hanged, you didn't make it. You just did not make it. Look at this. These are like indentations. Now, nobody's allowed down here, so we have to be special. We have special thanks for this exclusive tour. I wonder what these pockets are for. Maybe that's where there's chains coming out of the wall. Don't know, but the ceiling is really interesting. It just comes to a peak. Look at that. Okay, well, all I can do is stand here and just imagine the horrors. What it would be like to be stuck in here, man. No siree. Cold and damp. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that I'm missing? They had
I think it's been quite nice shot as you walk back up, actually, with the light at the end of the stairs.
Okay.
It's quite nice.
So, look at that. So there were big iron doors here, or a door.
So there's a door and a gate.
And a gate.
Yeah.
So there was no chance of escape. Oh yeah, look at this.
Did you notice the holes in the walls?
I did. What are those? What is
So we
that?
think this probably would have had timbers running across to create a ledge, maybe to lift off the floor.
So the timbers went across. Yeah, the same ones are on the other side. And is that so they could like lay up here?
So they could possibly lay up.
Oh, so there was some humanity.
Yeah. And this is from reeds that was used in construction at the time. It's like quite a local detail. So
Oh,
the
it's not
reeds
from-
The reeds over time have vanished, and you're left with
Oh, so
water.
that's not by condensation and dripping.
No,
That's
fine.
okay. I was wrong.
Construction. That's reeds. That,
Yes, you can still see a little bit just there.
What's that?
Bit of the original reed that's through.
so it's used as a binding aid, to bind it, to bind the line.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like a weave, and then they put the
Right.
So it's quite unique, quite local, deep sort of medieval detail. And then
Interesting.
you've got two very different stones. So you've got more of a random stone on that side, and then this is cut stone.
Look at the size of those blocks. Huge. And how long would people be stuck in here on average?
Well, I think that the witches are the last people who were in here, aren't they? So it wasn't used again for those purposes.
How long were they in here? Just days or weeks? Or?
I'm not sure on the exact time, but it wouldn't have been days.
I'll have to go
it
back
would have
and
been
look.
a while. So.
A while?
But they would, if you go on the tour, the
Oh.
tour would be able to tell
They
you
tell
where
you.
the witches
Okay,
are.
I definitely check that out. Yeah, gosh, it's smaller than I thought. I thought it would, you watch the series Outlander, Jamie and with his boogery friend, and you're just like, this is nothing like what I imagined.
I think there's about 8 people was there down here. I think 10.
Yeah.
So it's quite a small space for 10 people.
10 people, that's
10 people.
yeah, right.
And very dark and very cold.
No light?
No light.
Did they feed them?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. Not sure.
I'm sure they gave them some bread
They
and
would have had
water.
to keep them alive for the trial.
Just- yeah, they
because
wanted
were
to
held here, so,
Yeah.
so they would have basically, I would imagine, got the bare minimum.
And once they were sentenced, then it was off to the hanging.
Yeah.
It wasn't like today, 30 years,
No.
which,
So did you see the Golden Lion pub in Lancaster where they had the last drink? There's a got a plaque where it was the last. I don't know if that was the witches though, was it?
No.
No, that wasn't the witches. That was anybody who was hanged. So not the witches. That was the witches were before the Golden Lion. That's George. So.
what year are we talking, like when was this built? 1500s?
Yeah, 15 something, and the witches were 1612.
1612 torches.
1512. Oh my gosh. It's hard to wrap my head around. Look at that. Just imagine what went on in here. The suffering. There it is, the rings on the floor. That really is a telltale. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And with that, we will sneak out of here before they lock the door on us.